You're listening to the Big Cast, your source for the latest in financial technology. Brought to you weekly by the Best Innovation Group, with your hosts, John Best and Glenn Sarvati.
Hello, everyone. My name's John Best, and welcome to the Big Cast. We've got a lot for you today, and I don't want to spend too much time introducing myself. With me, as always, is the man, the legend, the world traveler, the dude who knows more about payments and has forgotten more about payments than anyone on the planet, my friend, Glenn Sarvati. Hey, Glenn.
How you doing, John? I won't spend a lot of time introducing myself either, other than to say that I somehow managed to land in Atlanta, Georgia in the middle of a hurricane last night.
Yeah, because you had a good chance of landing in Cuba if the wind was right.
I was shocked. It wasn't even. It wasn't all that bumpy. Even
you could have caught a tailwind and made it all the way to Cuba. So no, I'm really happy. As you know, many of our big colleagues are located in Florida, and everybody's good as of this morning.
Oh, good. So, I had not talked to them. I'm glad to hear that.
Yep, and one of our big partners, Suncoast, they seem to have weathered it well. So, this is obviously going to be a recurring thing. Just a quick note on that: having lived in Florida for, I don't know, from 1987 to 2007, so 20 years, and having seen lots of hurricanes, including Andrew, I was really struck by how quickly these things are forming and how quickly they getting up to speed. We had one last year that overnight went from like a 1 to a 4 or something. It was on the Pacific as well, which was interesting. And
I left town on Tuesday morning, and frankly, it never even occurred to me that I was going to have a problem getting back. And actually, I was up in Madison, Wisconsin at the True Stage Ventures conference, which we'll have some more content on. Got some had some great conversations, interviews with some really interesting companies up there. So that'll be next week's episode. But over the course of 36 hours, it went from, we're in Atlanta, we're inland. How big a deal can it be to, I'm not sure I'm going to get home.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. So, yeah, I think that was very interesting. I was in Phoenix, actually, at the Arizona Biltmore, which is, what a wonderful place. I don't know if you've ever been.
I think
Go ahead.
I think I have been there, and it is wonderful. I agree with you.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's an incredible resort. And we hit just right, it was like 110, and then we all landed and it just dropped to 85 and was comfortable for the outdoor things. And it was wonderful. I actually had the great privilege of facilitating America's Credit Union's Credit Union Council and CEO Council. Yeah. And wow, I got, a ton out of it. And there was this one thing, I think I immediately texted you as soon as I saw it, because I did not know about this. And it was brought to my attention. I think it was by, we had a credit union from Illinois who mentioned it. And then we also had Mr. Nussel was there, and a few other people, including, we had some other speakers who brought it up. But the Illinois Interchange Fee Prohibition Act, IFPA, which sounds like an IPA, like a new one,
But this one's not as tasty. Definitely not. It doesn't quench your thirst.
Well, and I love it uses the word prohibition because that just goes back to it makes you feel like, hey, we're finally banning, this terrible scourge on our country.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I did notice that because, it's named by somebody who's putting this rule forward. Prohibition didn't work out so well. So I'm surprised they chose that.
Well, let me catch you up on what I thought here. And so it prohibits payment processors from charging interchange fees on the portions of transactions that account for the sales, taxes, and tips. And that law is set to take effect on July 1st, 2025. So it's not going to kill all interchange, but taxes on, and I don't know what Illinois state taxes are at the moment.
They're high, especially when you consider how many folks are in this, in the Chicago area. I think they're up around 8-9%.
But yeah, so, and this just was so interesting to me on so many levels. And I'll kind of, you're right. It's for corporations, the income tax rate's 9.5%. Sales tax, it's 6.25%.
That's the
state, and the municipalities can add 4.75%.
I'm pretty sure that in most of the Chicagoland area, it's right around 9.
Actually, it says it could be as high as 11.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm curious. I'll take a look and see if we post that in there. I don't know if anybody's hit the double digits, but
And there's a
we're
gas
definitely on the
tax
higher
too.
end.
There's a gas tax and
Oh,
a cigarette tax.
well, that's a great point. I mean, the gas tax gets really interesting. People and gas is about the only place I can think of where what we see as the price is the final price. Everything else is, you see something listed, and then at the end of the transaction, they add on the state taxes, et cetera. But there's state and federal taxes, and it's all just baked into the number that you see, which is nice that you know what you see is what you get. But that's it's an even bigger chunk, I believe. I'm not sure how much of it's state versus federal, but it's a big chunk.
Yeah. And so this is set to at this point, it's slated, I think is the word you asked to use. I thought that was a good way to put it. Um, it's slated to go into effect July 1st, 2025. And so yeah, there's a lot of things that right away ABA filed a lawsuit.
Well,
So
let me rewind this just a bit. We did have a conversation about this with Tom Kane from the Illinois Credit Union League a few weeks ago, and we talked to him just before the ABA and the Illinois Credit Union League and America's Credit Unions. Actually, I don't know what the phrase would be. The ABA is clearly the lead plaintiff, but they're definitely involved in the lawsuit as, I don't know, friends of the court. I'm not sure what the technical term is, but
well,
they play a role in it as well.
yeah, it was fascinating because we had a couple CEOs who were on those calls. Can you imagine a call with, the Illinois American Bankers Association, America's Credit Unions, Illinois Credit Union League, and Illinois Bankers Association. So, the enemy of my enemy, I guess.
Yeah, this is another one of those examples that I'm always in that kind of there's more that unites than divides us camp. It's like, for all the posturing of, getting angry at each other in public around things like, tax-free status, et cetera. At the end of the day, these people are talking to each other, and there's far more on the table that they have common cause than they do things to, be playing sharks versus jets.
Yeah, it was interesting though because one of the CEOs at the conference basically said, "Oh yeah, and I don't know if they thought we had all left, but I guess one of the banking association people, oh yeah, and we're still gonna deal with the grades and their tax issue or something along those lines."
We still hate you. We still
yeah,
hate
well, it was kind of like I saw something, I can't remember. It was like I want to say it was like a skit of some sort where they were just kind of like, death to America, yeah, or Heil Hydra, just kind of like, oh yeah, don't forget, but
Well, I mean,
not,
another example of that would be like the Lincoln Project. So I can't
yeah.
wait till I can go back to hating Democrats again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but in the meantime, we have to deal with this.
Mhm.
So there's a lawsuit against it. But the thing that caught me, the immediate thing that caught my eye, caught my ear was, how the heck are they going to implement this?
Well, that's exactly what Tom got into. And that's my understanding is the belief. Well, again, at least this is the stated belief. Who knows exactly what's going on behind the scenes? Maybe you got more of this than I did from being in that room, but there's still hope that the legislature, which passed this in a very 11th hour fashion, clearly without understanding fully the ramifications of what they were doing. There's still a hope that there will be some unwinding that takes place through the standard rules of legislation. However, the point that was made in the press release when they filed the lawsuit was, we can't take that chance. We can't do this by July 1. So we need to protect ourselves by filing this lawsuit, because if we can't fix it through normal legislative fashion, this is our only recourse.
Yeah, and the other thing that I thought was interesting was there was a lot of talk about junk fees in general from a regulatory standpoint. But and before I get there, this IFPA, again, not a new kind of IPA beer, was paired with a cap on the sales tax discounts merchants receive. So that makes it like if the merchants like will have to do this because there's no other way they could balance this out, right?
Well,
because now they've been capped on the discount that they can get. So
yeah,
they're
what
gonna
I
have
what
to.
I understood was this was a give back to the merchants, because they used to basically, their point, and a fair point is, why are we paying to collect the state's taxes? And the state said, okay, fine, we're going to give you this other give back that will actually cover your cost of this. Well, that got sliced in the attempt to balance the budget. The retailers blew a gasket and they said, okay, well, what can we do to make you feel better? And they pulled out this thing, which, quite frankly, the retailers and the merchants community has been looking for a place to push this through at some state level for years. And literally at the 11th hour, when there was a crisis of having to try to pass a budget, they said, well, how about this? And it doesn't affect the budget dollars from the state standpoint. And, under that, kind of pressure of trying to get the ticket closed, they said, okay, fine, we'll put it in. Good. Which is kind of strange too. Why was this part of a budget? This is not a budget exercise, but it gets kind of tacked in the same way that the Durbin Amendment got tacked in back when it was passed.
Right. So back to the operational stuff I was talking about. So I looked into it a little bit, and basically what they're saying is, hey, when you run a transaction, you know how when you go up and first of all, as we all know, you tip everyone now. It doesn't matter what they do. Like, for example, I was using the kiosk at Panera, and it basically came up and said, how much of a tip do you
That's a really interesting one. Yeah, we're going to not allow you to place an order with a human being, but you can send, and yeah, okay, yeah, there's still people behind there preparing the food.
Well, yeah, their big window, all of them were wearing shirts and hats that said, cooks need tips too.
Yeah.
No, they weren't. I'm just kidding. Sorry, but
well,
anyways.
but it is ironic, and I've run into this several times. Several cashless storefronts, we do not accept cash, somehow still accept cash for tips.
Right. And so, yeah, they have their jars or whatever. So here's how they want the merchants to do this. This is what I read. Basically, they want them to bifurcate the tax and tip amounts, right? So when you send through the transaction, you'll have to send through the transaction without tax, right? So that can get the full interchange. Then you'll have to send through, I guess, the sales tax, which won't be interchanged. That's a word I mismade up, so you know. And then you have to send through the tip. And that's just the tip, no pun intended. That's just the tip of the iceberg, because that's just the merchants. Then you got the payment processors. One, think about this. You're basically tripling the traffic. You're tripling the amount of transactions for everybody. So how's this going to show up on your statement? Isn't that going to confuse people? Like, and what happens if you come from out of town, But
yeah, that's the other piece. I mean, this not only would all of this have to, I mean, for the merchant, okay, I'm domiciled in Illinois. Okay, I know I need to deal with this. Then all of a sudden you start dealing with people who are ordering from outside. If they're using an Illinois credit card, in another state, yeah, it gets messy in a hurry.
Right. And so, and don't forget too that and maybe that's on purpose. Like, hey, let's make this part of it so hard to do that everybody goes, it'd be easier. No interchange at all. But anyways, so once they do that, we've got sort of and what happens to merchants that are domiciled there online is an interesting, thought process.
Details. You don't need to put that in the law. They'll figure it out.
Oh, you're right. They always do. They think about everything. All right. So now let's get to so that right there. No way that happens by July 1st. I mean, just the changes to the network alone.
Oh, and you left one out too.
Oh, what did I leave out?
If the merchants can't get that all in place, and I'm only slightly exaggerating, they can just collect all the paperwork in a shoebox, and they can send it to the processor. And the processor has to rebate any interchange that they paid on taxes and tips. And they've got to do it within 30 minutes. I'm sorry, 30 days. Can you picture the effort? I mean, talk about a electronic process going back to, pen and paper. Here's all the receipts. Send us X amount of money. You got 30 days. So much for accounting ledgers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a time, right? Remember when it was a big deal that Amex would give you your receipts as part of remember the old days?
Oh yeah.
American Express, you get your, I don't think they do that anymore.
It was a big deal. I mean, then they actually, turned them into images, and you got them in kind of miniature form that actually came back on your statement. And then after a while, they realized no one looked at those anymore.
Right. Well, only if they needed to do a return or something and couldn't find the receipt, then it was pretty handy. So I tried to look into how much this is saving merchants, but it's kind of, as you pointed out, it's a compromise, right? So while they'll save on their interchange fees, they're also capping the amount that we talked about, can retain for the, collecting taxes, because that's where you, as you said, hey, why are we collecting your taxes? Okay. So let's go on to the next part of this. So let's say that the ABA coalition fails, and this gets through. Then there's there's already groups, I guess, planning on taking this to other states.
Pennsylvania already did.
They already did. Okay, so talk to me about that.
Well, then it shows how it gets more complicated too, because it did not pass, but they very quickly took it to Pennsylvania. For whatever reason, Pennsylvania did not include the tip part, just the state tax part. So again, if you're going to do this at a state by state level, okay, well, maybe you're happier because you don't have to do it for tips, but that's still two different processes you got to put in place. And because the industry was already kind of on their guard and they managed to educate folks, Pennsylvania, after it started getting some traction, said, okay, let's hold off on this and look at it a little more closely before we take action. So it's kind of back on the back burner and being studied. But it's whack-a-mole. There's going to be multiple states where this is going to pop up now.
Yeah, I've heard Florida and Texas as well.
Well, and that's it. That's one of those interesting ones, because for whatever reason, and I'm not really sure how the politics of this work, Ron DeSantis basically killed this one. It did show up, and he actually did a line item strike through a veto power to keep this from getting into the budget, and in the process complicated some other stuff, because he actually wound up vetoing some other things that I guess by necessity kind of went along with it and cut off funding for some other important things. But yeah, it gets very ugly very fast.
I bet he was just like worried about, repercussions from the mouse.
Well, the interesting thing, the mouse, you would think, when you talk about the merchants and what benefit, and I guess you're going to get to that, but you want to talk about the 1%. I mean, all the benefits of this are going to go to the huge retailers. I would suspect that the small retailers will wind up behind on this one.
Yes,
because they're going to wind up with more costs. They're probably going to have to replace their terminals. Have to do upgrades, things like that.
They'll be lucky to break even. That's what I think. And what's interesting is the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, the IRMA, is they help the
my aunt runs this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, actually, IRMA used to be the name of a telesystem we had, but it was actually written. They were the ones that helped write the law, and I can't find any studies that basically say what the end result will be for merchants. I don't see any projections that they did. I would thought that the law would have, or the bill would have included projections, but I'm not sure they want. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm curious who are the driving factors of an organization like IRMA. I was hopeful. I guess I would have been shocked if it were the case, but I would hope that some retail association that is more driven by mom and pop merchants would step forward and say, this doesn't make sense. But depending on what organization you're dealing with, I mean, it still could be the Jewel, the big grocery store chains, the major gas station chains. They may see enough benefit from this one that they and they may have a loud enough voice in that retailer association.
So you're talking about MAPMRA, the Mom and Pop Retail Merchants Association.
Well, a lot of these things tend to be run through the convenience.
I just made that up.
No, but I'm just saying,
like it, though.
There is that group of I forget what the official acronym is, but there's a group of convenience stores. It's a national association, and they're always at the front lines on this for exactly the reason we talked about already, because it affects gas more than pretty much any other product that people buy.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So, yeah, I just, that was kind of, I just was surprised to hear about it. But, it's one of those things where you don't always see it coming, the direction it's going to come from, because then the other big discussion we had was, the politicization, that's a word, right, of junk fees.
Yes, yes.
Which I know you've been kind of up on. And we had a really good discussion about that. And, I'm sort of the mind that we probably need to get to that point of, obviously we need to remove them. But I just wonder, let me throw this question at you there, Glenn, Mr. Servati. If I was a credit union and I had a service and my service was a um a service that would uh sort of automatically predict any NSFs or anything you might get, and also um it was tied with a line of credit that was reasonable, but it was also sort of the last resort. It wasn't the first resort in that space. And it was a subscription service that would automatically sort of take care of those things, which would reduce the rate on the line of credit significantly, is kind of where my head is on this. Um, what you know, if someone's willing to pay 11.99 a month to watch, uh, Paw Patrol, why wouldn't you be willing to pay? And I know you do that, Glenn. Don't hide from it. It's
Where
okay.
did
It's
you
okay
come
to be
up with Paw Patrol?
well, because my buddy Jake, his kid loves Paw Patrol,
Okay.
and he has to pay for it, or there's hell to pay. Uh, if he doesn't get the Paw Patrol or Bluey on the screen, it's not going to be pretty for him. But I mean, and to be fair, that probably is more significant pressure than the NSFs. But it just seems to me that it's time to stop looking at a lot of these digital services as free, um, and to start looking at if we could provide enough value as a subscription process. There should be a free tier, just like any software. Home banking should have a free tier.
And it's
But
also an opt-in. Opt-in.
right,
It's
right. But the thing I know it's going to happen is, we're watching open banking sort of worm its way out to the world. It's kind of like a caterpillar in a cocoon that is, we know it's in there. But we're not sure when it's going to pop out completely. But, we have a lot of ideas because we've seen other caterpillars pop out of these things. We don't know if it's going to be a moth or a butterfly.
we went
Yeah.
from Paw Patrol to caterpillars pretty
Don't
fast.
moths come from those? I think they do. So, anyways, when that hits, it's going to be sort of it's going to open the door for someone else to do this, some other, and they're going to charge for it. They're absolutely why wouldn't they? There's
And
nothing to
it's
be
interesting
made
because
other than, but you could pay for it off the interest of that account that you attach. But but my problem is I feel like people who have done that, which by the way, I applaud them for doing something different than the fees, but it still feels like it's not, it should be the last resort, is to, is to cause more debt for someone. Uh, that should be like the bottom of the logic tree in my mind.
yeah, and and the problem is, again, whether it's politicization, however you say that, weaponization, whatever you want to call it, it's just so frustrating how words so quickly lose all meaning. And junk fee right now, I mean, it's so easy to just basically attach that label to almost anything. And I think there are some very significant junk fees that need to be addressed. But now it's just become kind of just a very casual term that we're lumping anything in that category. In fact, I just read, and we haven't even talked about this yet, but the Department of Justice's antitrust lawsuit against Visa on debit interchange. And I thought it was interesting that one report that I read equates the way that Visa charges to the way Ticketmaster charges.
Yeah.
I hate Ticketmaster. I would do anything to
Oh, you're
avoid
just all
Ticketmaster charges.
Radiohead,
But at the same time,
Pearl
it's like
Jam loving indie rock guy. No, I'm just kidding. You're right.
it's not, I at least see where they come up with that, but it's a pretty bizarre. I mean, again, and the biggest piece to me is, okay, you're talking about something that is adding like, a percent. I would, if Ticketmaster wanted to charge 2% and on debit, which is supposedly the one that's antitrust,
Yeah,
it's
well,
a 1%. Hey, Ticketmaster, sign me up. I will buy all my tickets from you if you charge me a 1% fee. Great, let's do it.
so so tell first of all, I believe, and I could be wrong, that Visa is pretty much the main supplier. Like they're over 50% as far as I know on the
I
debit
believe the
transactions.
report that I saw had about 60. Yeah.
60. Okay. And that's got to be, oh, I mean, I'm just thinking about the fees for those at 60%. I don't know, $5 billion, something like that
It's,
annually.
it's that basic rule of, a small percentage of a very large number is a very large number.
So what else does it say? Are they accusing them of like any anti-competitive stuff like the old
Yes,
Microsoft
yes.
one? Like, if you don't put our browser in, you got a nice software company here.
I hate to
Shame if
see anything
something
happen
happened
to
to
it.
it, you know?
Well, and that is, I mean, they're not, they don't seem to really be pointing to the market share as their main case. They seem to be pointing more to the deals that they've struck with various key players like Apple to really stem the potential growth of any competing solutions. I mean, one thing we're seeing a lot of that we'll probably see more of with the open banking rules that are going to be issued any day now. We've been saying that for a while, but the whole notion of pay by bank, where and I think there's this bizarre belief that pay by bank will be free. I mean, every once in a while you hear people talk about, oh yeah, an ACH only costs fractions of a penny. Yeah, find
Yeah.
somebody who's going to charge you fractions of a penny for an
Well,
ACH.
not only that,
Time you
but
put
just
all
the
the value
processing
add
of
in.
it. Yeah, the processing about it. I think McAllister, our buddy, and this was years ago, gave me. He thought he'd done some studies, and he thought that for the average FI to process an ACH was somewhere on 26 to 30 cents a transaction, which is significant especially if it starts to
No, no,
grow.
no.
But
It's less than a penny. It's less than a penny.
well, no, I know, but I mean to
No, I'm
use
kidding. I'm
like,
kidding. No, I
oh yeah, yeah,
totally,
yeah, 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 yeah,
totally
yeah,
agree
yeah.
with you. Totally
Yeah,
agree
no,
with you.
you're not agreeing with me. You're just messing with me. But here, let me ask you this question. Remember back when MCW was sort of the merchants were working, was it MCW? Do I have the wrong name? The merchants were really rising up to do something. They were working with PayPal, and PayPal was starting to push really hard on it. What made me think of it was what you just said, the bank transactions. And then out of the blue, Visa bought a controlling interest, I think, of or got involved with PayPal. They got a new CEO, and all of a sudden, just wasn't a thing anymore.
I gotta go, and that was one of the complaints again that Visa did drop the idea of buying Plaid because the Department of Justice complained about it. And again, the art, and this is a Wall
We'll
Street
fix
Journal.
your ACH. We're going to take that feature right out of Plaid.
But the article, this is the Wall Street Journal article, so I'm not sure if this was actually directly in the lawsuit or if it was the Wall Street Journal's reporting that they backed off because they saw that they were going to get too much resistance from the DOJ, and then soon afterwards they bought Tink, a European company that basically does the same thing as Plaid but at a lower level. So they basically kind of accomplished the same thing, for for less money and for less visibility.
So I saw a quote from Merrick Garland, who I think is still very angry about not being a Supreme Court justice.
I would be.
But he basically said what Visa does affects the price of everything. By allowing them to charge fees, exceeding what's possible in a competitive market because there's no one to stop them. Is basically what he's saying.
I saw that quote too. Yeah.
So what does that mean for Discover?
Well, yeah, that's that's one of the points that I thought of as soon as I saw this suit is, the Department of Justice is also still waiting to, issue any kind of a ruling on whether Capital One can buy Discover. One of the things that comes out of that, and depending on who you talk to, there are a lot of different rationales for that deal, including the credit card portfolio, which is what most people think about. But Discover has probably the most credible alternative to the Visa network that's still basically underpenetrated in the marketplace. So and I've seen this comment that if you took all of Capital One's volume and immediately added it, I think it's the Pulse network, if I'm not mistaken, suddenly you've got a much more viable competitor to Visa. So I would think, and who knows if the two sides are really talking to one another, but I would think, because I think one's the FTC, right? And one's the DOJ. But this would seem to be an argument for potentially approving Capital One's purchase of Discover, maybe with some other caveats that they have to sell off certain pieces of the business or something like that. But to me, the two have to be kind of connected in some fashion.
Yeah, I would think so. So yeah, I don't know. I
Well,
don't
the
know.
other to the other point that you made too, that it raises the price of everything. Yes, I think that you can factually say that any cost of goods sold is going to, and it is a cost. Now, and especially again, remember when I think people, and I did this myself before I kind of looked at it a little bit more closely. When people think about Visa, they're usually thinking about credit cards. This is the
Not
debit
debit.
card. This is the debit card piece. The debit card pricing is significantly lower than credit card pricing. So if you're talking about raising the price, you're probably talking about 1%. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not a big number, right? And it's not going to go to zero. So
Well, you know why though,
what are you
right?
saving?
Because you have to be a programmer to get these things to do debit unless you're at Walmart,
Yeah,
you know. And even Walmart, I think under $50. I don't know if they still do, but they used to, under a certain amount, they would just, because the law about
right, right,
you could just drop it to signature if you wanted.
exactly.
Um, but yeah, all the other merchants are like, which is interesting because you would have thought they'd go the other way. Pardon me, you have to be a programmer to get it to signature. Everybody
Yeah.
wants debit, and so and like sometimes it's press cancel, and then you press cancel,
Right.
and it
I love
actually
that.
just
Yeah, they
cancels the
always say,
transaction.
and again, it just shows how little people understand. Like, just run it as credit. I'm using my debit card. I'm going to run it as credit. What does
Yeah,
that mean?
what does that
I'm
really
not.
mean?
It's not a credit card. I'm not making a credit purchase. And
No.
I know what it means, but it just shows how little people understand what. But the other point, and this, again, it even is more nonsensical on the debit card side. But even on credit card, and this goes probably back to the Illinois case, is okay, if you got rid of interchange, does it raise the price? Academically, I guess yes. How about if we got rid of interchange at the end of every receipt, we just actually issued the consumer a discount because they didn't do it? I don't think they're going to do that, because you know what happens, and it's been proven over time, the merchants are just going to keep the money. It's not
Yeah,
of the consumer. You're not. Are you costing the consumer money? Yes. Are you going to save the consumer money by getting rid of it? No.
interesting. So interesting. We live in interesting times.
Yeah, we do.
Hey, you know what?
What? We've
I think
burned
it's
another
time
good, as they used to say on Car Talk. You just wasted another valuable half hour.
of
You don't
someone's
talk about
time,
interchange.
at least ours. No, I love these talks. I
No,
learn a
me
lot,
too.
and I was so thankful you were, because I was like caught a little off guard on that whole IFPA thing.
No,
I
I
was
think
like,
that was
they need.
it was late at night. I got that text. I'm like, hey,
I
I'm
was
all,
like,
yeah.
Glenn, help me. What's going on here? But it was such a great group. It was everything from super large credit unions down to smaller credit unions, and they all worked together. It was fantastic. It was probably the best one of these that I've been to in a long time, and I really enjoyed facilitating it. Got to see some incredible people. Dr. Tasha Urich, kind of a hero of mine, someone I watch a lot on TEDx. Um, and another guy I met who I hadn't heard of before, but wow, he had a lot of great things to say. Really an AI guy, Ian B. Craft, who showed up looking a lot like the Dieter from Club Sprockets, which I was pretty impressed. He had the
Yes.
black
Oh, wow.
turtleneck and everything on, but man, what a brilliant, brilliant, guy. So I'm looking forward to talking more to him. But
It's an interesting point. That, I mean, I know that they just had the large credit union roundtable, the small credit union roundtable's coming up, but here you've got one that actually mixes the two at the CEO level, which I think is really valuable. They're
it
both.
is. It is. It's really valuable. It was valuable because, they're all facing different things, but in the end, aren't we all just a little the same, Glenn? We all have red blood. That's what I say. We all have interchange. We all have, savings and deposits. We all have loans, you know.
You mean
It's just a
like
matter of
community
scale.
banks and credit unions? I'm still trying to get a kumbaya moment there. I know it's a losing
Kumbaya,
battle.
kumbaya. All right. Well, this has been another moment brought to you by the Big
Hit another
Cast.
podcast.
Yeah. And Glenn, where can people find you if they're interested in talking to you, working with you, hiring you to come facilitate something, or just in general, just wanna just, love up on you. Just come and find out more about
Love
you,
up
take you
on me.
out for a drink. because there is no better guy to talk to about this stuff than you.
These days, I'll just say, find me on LinkedIn, Glenn Servati, 154 Advisors.
LinkedIn.
You're also going to find me on the circuit. This is still the height of conference season. I'll be at the Venture Tech Conference in November. I'll be at Money 2020.
Ooh, I'm going to be at Big Bright Minds. I'm excited about that.
Where is that this year? Austin? No.
I want to say San Diego. I need
You're
to
right.
look
It
it
is
up.
San Diego, and that's a little bit.
And it's gonna me and Lamont Black are gonna.
Oh, really?
We're gonna cut it up on some AI, dude. We're gonna AI this thing.
There is so much going on right now. I just saw our friend Mike Lawson this week at the Ventures Conference too, and I'm not sure he's even making a stop home for a big chunk of the.
We should start a new podcast and call it The Three Amigos, and we'll have you, me, and Lawson. I would like that.
And he'll always be doing it from the road. That was actually one of the things that we were talking about at the True Stage Ventures Conference, reaching the Gen Z market and population for credit unions. Clearly an important opportunity. And we'll have more to say about that next week.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks.
Peace, brothers.
Check back each week for the latest from the big cast. Or better yet, we hope you'll consider subscribing for free via Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Tweet us at Big FinTech, email info@big-fintech.com, or visit us at big-fintech.com and click on the Media tab, where you can post a comment or check out our archive of hundreds of past episodes. See you next week.